Good morning, Alex. How you doing?
Hey, Kelly, what's going on, man? Happy Thursday morning to you.
Yeah. It's been a week. Been quite a week, actually. We had a nice little cool snap. That was kind of nice. And now it looks like it's going to rain for a few days. And I always seem to talk about the weather at the beginning of these episodes. Why do I do that? Am I just old?
I don't know, but, people can listen to this anytime. People could be listening to this in the wintertime, in the summertime.
True.
They could be listening to this in the 2030s.
I hope so. Back catalog.
It's these episodes are what you call evergreen, right?
Evergreen. Well, I guess maybe talking about the weather is a little bit nostalgic, a little bit of history, because maybe there isn't any rain in 2030. Like it doesn't exist anymore and it's a dead end, at least in Texas.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be terrible? Does your person today have anything to do with the weather?
Oh, no, not really. Not really.
I was going to guess Willard Scott.
That would be a great one. But before we go any further, I got to give a shout out to two new Patreon supporters. We've got Christy and Julie, both from Julie's in DC and Christy is in upstate New York, and they jumped on the Patreon supporter train, and it's starting to get momentum. We're starting to see some momentum here.
Hey, Christy. Hey, Julie. Hey, did we get them a car? Did they give that much?
No. They both have stickers already, and I'll see them this summer, and they'll both get T-shirts. So
maybe they don't know about the car. Maybe they didn't listen to that episode. So put it out there. Let's put it out there for them.
Yeah, tell them.
It was
tell them what it is.
$160,000.
Get you.
We have different levels, so you can get a sticker, you can get a T-shirt, you can get a. Is there a level? What's
right?
Next?
No, there's nothing in the middle. It's sticker,
T-shirt,
T-shirt,
there was a level
car.
where we would come out, and if you supplied a chair, we would do a live episode.
Show. Maybe we should have an Orange Julius level too. So if you give at say $50 a month, Alex will, next time he sees you, now he has to see you. You have to be in the same place, but he will make you a custom Orange Julius.
You have to supply the ingredients, though.
Now, I'm
not gonna tell you what they are.
You might as well make your own at that point, then, right?
Well, no, if all you have is like sauerkraut and ice cream and tomatoes, I'll have to figure out a way to make Orange Julius out of that.
That's more like
my problem.
Purple pucus.
That's my problem. But you supply whatever ingredients you want, and I'll make an Orange Julius out of it.
What was that show? This is like Iron Chef, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a takeoff of that.
Well, I want to talk today about a guy that, a man, by the way. He was born in April of 1943 in Paris. So I think World War II was still going on at that time in Paris, wasn't it? Bombs.
1942? Yeah.
1943.
Yeah, for sure.
He died in 1993 at the age of 50 in Hollywood, California. And died pretty tragically, actually, but we'll get into that a little later. And by the way, Dirt Nap City is not a show about tragedy. It's a celebration of life, right? It truly is about that. He became known as an actor, but before he was an actor, he was actually a very gifted painter.
Was he known for painting?
No, that was something I didn't know about him. He got into art school at the age of 16 in France, which was a big deal. He sold some paintings at that age, and he also was one of the youngest French people to be exhibited in a French museum, which, if you think about that, that's a level above a U.S. museum, or a art gallery.
A French actor.
Yes.
That died tragically in the 1990s.
But Hollywood.
He died in America, so he was in American films.
Yep.
The last time it was a what?
He was also a painter, as I mentioned.
But I wouldn't have known that.
No, probably not.
Knew that. So
you want to know his breakout role that might help
sure.
define him? He was a Bond villain. In 1977, 78, he was in a James Bond film and played a villain. Now, while you're mulling this over, I've got a little audio clip I'm going to play for you, and it's not going to be super obvious until the end, but the sooner you can guess, the better, because this might help.
Hey. So that's the Fantasy Island theme.
Good ear on that.
That's Hervé Villechaize.
That's right. That's the one.
He's French?
Yes.
I did not know Hervé Villechaize was French.
Yes, born in France, but that was the accent you were getting. It wasn't might not have been what you thought it was, but those two words, de plain, became a cultural phenomenon.
Oh
in the
yeah,
70s
yeah.
and
I did
80s.
not know he was French. I thought he was from South America.
Nope, he was French. He actually was born Hervé Jean-Pierre Villechaize, and he was not born into poverty or anything tragic. As a matter of fact, his father was a surgeon and his mother was a socialite. And get this is a total tie-in to other Dirt Nap cities. While Hervé never drove an ambulance, his mother drove an ambulance during World War II. Can you believe that?
Can you explain that? Can you explain that for people that might not have listened to the whole catalog?
There are a lot of episodes, especially with people from the early 1900s. I think it was more of a World War I thing, but a lot of the people that we've covered were ambulance drivers during World War I or World War II for some reason.
Most of the veterans that we've covered were not in combat, but they drove ambulances.
Except for Sparky, or did Sparky drive an ambulance?
I think he might have. And then the other thing is a lot of them go into the military when they're like 15.
Yeah. They were brave back then. I got to give the greatest generation some props.
So Hervé Villechaize's mother drove an ambulance in World War
II,
right before he was born.
Yep. Or maybe while he was being born, I mean, it was an ambulance, so they had the equipment,
Honestly, didn't know he was in anything other than Fantasy Island.
Oh yeah,
he kind of appeared and then he disappeared.
He has a deep catalog. I
didn't even know he was interesting. I look forward to this.
He is one of the most recognizable things about him was he had an endocrine related growth disorder. Do you know which one it is?
Endocrine. But if you're British, I think you say endocrine.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say endocrine because I think British always sounds smarter. He was only 3 feet 10 inches tall. And unfortunately, his father actually sort of tortured him as a child with good intentions, but his father put him through his father was a surgeon, and his father put him through some medical experiments to see if he could cure, quote unquote, Hervé from, being a dwarf or a little person. He was bullied as a child. He had these harsh treatments that were pretty traumatic, and it really kind of shaped his personality a little bit later in life. He had insecurity, a lot of anger. He needed recognition, because I think his parents were already high up on the social ladder, and he might have been I don't know, considered, I think for some people maybe a bit of a black sheep or an embarrassment to them or something like that. And that gave him a lot of vulnerability at a young age. But he found refuge in painting, and he had a natural gift for it. Now, his paintings, like I said, were some of the, he was one of the youngest people to exhibit in the Museum of Paris. He painted a lot of landscapes, impressionistic stuff. If you saw some of his paintings, if you Google it, you'll see, I mean, they look like classical paintings from that era, right? They're coastlines and harbors and towns, and they're all oil on canvas. Mm-hmm. Well, that got him a little bit of recognition, but he wasn't happy with that. And so in 1964, he moved to New York, Greenwich Village, at the age of 21. And can you imagine Greenwich?
To be.
I know. Can you imagine that
60s?
In the 60s?
Oh,
man, that would have just been such a crazy
basically, that's Bob Dylan.
Yep. Andy Warhol.
All that stuff is going on around then.
It was, theaters and artists and avant-garde music and all that stuff was going in.
Place to be.
He didn't even really know English when he moved there, and he learned it by watching American television. You hear that a lot, right? That's a kind of reoccurring story about people learning English through watching television.
But I think it's easier now with subtitles than it would have been before subtitles.
Yeah. I guess before you just had to have context, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was kind of like, oh, I see what that person's doing. I understand what this means. Well, he lived in New York for a couple of years. He was doing odd jobs. He did a little bit of photography and art. He was in some theater, live theater, and even had some small film roles. I mean, you know, if you think about like Andy Warhol and the way he made films back then, you know, he was hiring all kinds of people just to be in the films. They didn't have a plot. They didn't have to act. It was just, you know, hey, let's, as you called it, gonzo filming. But
back then, unlike now, with a guy like Peter Dinklage, who really tries to stay away from roles that are just for little people.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that.
Back then, that's all you could get was
that's right.
Role, you know, those kind of roles.
That's 100% right. Well, you know, he did struggle financially. I don't know what his situation with his parents was. You know, if you move to America, we're not going to support you. You
do it in a French accent.
Yeah, if you move to America, you will not give you support. We will no longer give you these treatments, and your mother will not drive you to the hospital in an ambulance. No, that's not really French, but lived in his car for a while. I mean, kind of hit, you know, financially hit rock bottom living in his car. But then the big breakout, 1974. Do you know what that was? I think I mentioned it in the clues.
You did?
He was a Bond villain.
Oh, right.
He played the role of Knick Knack in The Man with the Golden Gun. Now, I
don't know if I've seen that one.
Do you have a favorite Bond, by the way? I mean, most people, I think, Sean Connery.
Oh, you know, I wasn't a big James Bond person growing up because I'll tell you why. Because the first Bond movie I ever took a look at was Goldfinger.
Oh, yeah.
And it really scared me.
Yeah.
I was probably too young to watch it.
There were dark elements.
And just the idea, like that song creeped me out.
Yeah.
The Goldfinger song kind of was scary to me. It goes back to me being scared of like hippies and that kind of stuff. It seemed very too mystical for me, and I was scared. So every Bond movie I've seen, I've enjoyed, but I've never really gotten into the lore of it all. So, but I'd say, yeah, Sean Connery is kind of the gold standard, right?
Yeah.
The Goldfinger standard.
So here's the thing. I bet I've been late to the party because the first Bond movie I ever saw was Octopussy with
I was going to say Moonraker.
Roger Moore. Now Moonraker was
in the 80s, right?
Yeah, was that Roger Moore as well?
I think so, yeah.
So let's get back to the Man with the Golden Gun. He played Knick Knack, and Knick Knack. Have you ever seen a picture of Hervé? He's not in his white Fantasy Island suit, but he's in like a little darker suit with a bowler hat kind of thing, and he looks a little bit more like a gangster. That was the outfit he wore as Knick Knack. And what you said a few minutes ago actually is kind of spot on about being cast in that film. Because he was a little person.
I'm looking at him now, yeah.
Is he wearing the bowler hat and the little
henchman?
Outfit?
Yeah, henchman knick-knack, like a three-piece suit. Almost looks like
sharp.
Oh, yeah, he looks great. Yeah, that looks great.
So the thing that was interesting about it, you know, I kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole on it and watched a lot of clips from this movie. I think I had seen it years ago, but I don't remember what was going on. But he was Roger Moore was James Bond. Christopher Lee was Scaramanga. That was the bad guy's name. And Scaramanga is a mysterious guy. It was like Julio Scaramanga, or I forget Scaramanga's first name. But what's interesting, if you think about it, he was a manservant to this bad guy. He wasn't the main bad guy, right? He wasn't the top billing of bad guy. His jobs, what would a henchman do?
Sidekick, right? Sidekick.
Yeah. He'd set up meetings with the good guys, you know, with Bond.
Yeah.
He transported deadly weapons. He spied on targets.
Now, this picture that I'm looking at, he's holding a gun.
Yeah.
The gun looks to scale. The gun looks like it's his size, like it's a very, very tiny gun.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well,
Like it looks like if he had held a regular size gun, it would have almost been ridiculous looking. It would have looked too big for him. So they got him this little tiny gun. Have you seen this picture?
Yeah, yeah. I think Scaramanga took good care of him and saw him as a valuable part of his operation. You know, Scaramanga owned an island. So ironically, he was the sidekick on a private island as well, much like he would be later on Fantasy Island.
Oh, yeah.
But Scaramanga trusted him. He was the only person Scaramanga was close to. And of course, eventually Bond, wins the day. But he made a big impact, Hervé did, by playing this role. He wasn't just comic relief, as a little person like they might have intended originally. He actually really played the role really well. He was intelligent, he was sinister, he was manipulative, and people remembered him. And so that was a big door opener for him. That was 1974.
He was very charismatic. He had that unmistakable voice.
Yeah, yeah.
But he was also he wasn't a clown. Like he was kind of serious.
Well, he all the things I just said, he was a little bit mysterious and definitely intelligent and would have ideas. 77 comes along, and I don't know if you remember this. Do you remember what years Fantasy Island ran from, like its span?
I would guess 77 to 82 or 83.
84. Okay. But here's the thing.
I was an avid watcher of Fantasy Island. I freaking love that show.
So it's weird that you say that, because Fantasy Island was actually a little bit spooky, right? It had some supernatural, weird, scary stuff going. You didn't like James Bond because it scared you, but Fantasy Island didn't bother you?
I was probably older then. Yeah. I was just talking about Fantasy Island with our mutual friend Brian the other day and trying to figure out if Mr. Rourke was supposed to be have power, superpowers that he would make like this, or if he was like a witch, or
a lot of people say he was an island. An angel on Earth. He was a angel who was in purgatory and having to prove himself by manipulating and helping humans become more moral.
The show really doesn't make a lot of sense once you start stripping it away. You know what I mean?
But neither does any Different Strokes or The Love Boat or Alice or anything from that time.
We were talking about a particular episode where Gary Berghoff of MASH, Radar from MASH, plays a guy who wants to be like a baseball player, and he goes to Fantasy Island, and Tommy Lasorda, the manager of the Dodgers, is there. Right. Just happens to be there. So it's like, does Mr. Rourke pay Tommy Lasorda to be there? Or is this is the fantasy real? Like, is it a real thing that's happening, or is it in your mind? Are you dead? Is this like
on Lost?
Yeah, I didn't see that. Thanks for
They were all
spoiling.
dead. Yeah, sorry. Thanks. If you haven't watched Lost.
That just freed up a bunch of my time. I plan on watching it this weekend.
So there was chemistry between Ricardo Montalbán and Hervé Villechaize. They had good chemistry.
They really did.
And actually, you know what? I'll play you a little clip here. This is a great little dialogue between them about second chances.
I've got this great plan, and this time it's gonna work.
Tattoo, must I remind you that arranging that reception for Mr. Ransom at the last moment was no small task? These plans of yours are proving to be quite taxing, to say nothing of expensive.
Well, this one is cheap. It's not gonna cost you anything. Well, almost anything.
What really concerns me, Tattoo, is that you've apparently not yet learned that second chances are very rare and very valuable indeed. One must seize whatever opportunities life chooses to deal out and act quickly and decisively. Don't you understand?
Oh, yes, boss. I learned that. Strike the iron while hot. Who hesitate is lost. Opportunity only knocks but once.
The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Boss, please give me another chance. Did I ever ask you for anything before?
As a matter of fact, yes.
Well, I'm gonna ask you again.
Well, when you put it that way, how can I possibly refuse that too?
Couple of things there. First of all, is there a better accent than Ricardo Montalbán's Mexican accent?
No.
I mean, it is beautiful. Like it is. If I would rather have that accent than no accent. Like I would rather be talking like that.
Yes.
If I could wave a magic wand, I wish I could have that accent. It is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it has like their chemistry kind of has like a Sherlock Holmes and Watson vibe, I think.
Yeah.
Like kind of like you dummy, don't you get it? Like, but you will always be my assistant. You'll never
or Gilligan in The Skipper, right?
Not quite as condescending as that.
No, but a little bit of you dummy, don't you get it, right? Well, when you put it that, there's love there, but there's also a little bit of adversity and a little bit of
well, you can tell who's the guy that's always gonna come up short and the guy that's always gonna. But that you need that
easy there.
That's like in the case of Sherlock Holmes. What?
I said easy there. You said come up short.
Oh yeah. Sorry. When you think about it, that assistant, whether it's Watson or Tattoo or maybe even Gilligan, is the audience. Like we're not smart enough. We're not as smart as Sherlock Holmes. We're not as smart as Mr. Rourke. We're the audience. We're the dumb ones that are, but they're representing us, right?
He's queuing up Mr. Rourke's opportunity to give the moral of the story, right? Second chances do not come very often, and when you have them, you must seize them. And
haven't you learned by now? Yeah,
he's queuing up the moral, and yeah, it's interesting that you and Brian were talking about this because I did do quite a bit of reading about the Fantasy Island series and kind of what it was never really defined, like what was going on there. It's a luxurious tropical island. Mm-hmm. It's $50,000, by the way, for a weekend there. That's the cost,
and that's 40 years ago.
Yeah, that's $50,000. That's $200,000 today or whatever for 3 days. But it's got moral lessons. It's got cautionary tales. It's got emotion. It's got romance. It's got supernatural adventures. And then, these just plain old scary things that would happen occasionally. And I remember watching it sometimes because The Love Boat was on right before it. They paired those two together.
And it was the same kind of casting. It was all the same people that would get cast. It was
Aaron Spelling. It was Aaron Spelling. He was
the
producer for both. So,
it had that great chance to get stars from other TV shows to come on and flex their acting chops. And maybe you haven't seen, Mrs. Cunningham from Happy Days on anything else, but like you only see her as that, but now you get to see her as somebody else. I love that idea.
Right. She's on Love Boat. She was on the episode actually with Andy Warhol of the Love Boat, Mrs. Cunningham, and Tom Bosley as well. But I want you to give me some of the stars you remember from Fantasy Island. I've got a few here too.
Some of the guest stars.
Yeah, guest stars that came in and
Barbie Benton, of course.
Barbie Benton, yeah.
Was an old standby. And of course the aforementioned Gary Berghoff and Tommy Lasorda. They occasionally they would bring in people like Tommy Lasorda that was like,
they're trying to reach a different demographic, maybe.
I would say, probably Marion Ross and Tom Bosley.
I think they were on Love Boat, but I don't think they were on Fantasy Island.
Oh, really? Was Charo ever on there, or is that more of a Love Boat?
No, that was Love Boat. Yeah, Charo. Coochie coo.
So it wasn't exactly all the same people, huh?
Well, here's one from an episode a couple of weeks ago, the Andy Griffith Show. Don Knotts was on Fantasy Island.
I think I can picture that, and he wore like a lei around his neck, and
yeah. Joan Collins, Burt Reynolds, big 70s. Annette Funicello.
Annette Funicello was a big crush of my father's back in the day.
Oh, really? Okay. Shout out to Maxine.
She was on
better watch out.
Mickey Mouse Club.
Yeah.
Mouse Club, yeah.
Gina Davis was on.
Oh wow,
was
a
on
young
Fantasy Island.
Gina Davis, yeah.
LeVar Burton.
Yeah.
Was on. Sonny Bono. appeared on the show. And here's a couple that, well, Linda Carter, that's Tom
That's
Selleck.
Promotion. Oh, of course.
Tom Selleck. But, well, I don't think he was big yet. I don't think Magnum PI had hit yet. I think that was a little later. But here's two that I didn't know about that might surprise you. Donny Osmond.
Okay.
And Mark Hamill. Luke Skywalker was on.
Yeah, well, of course. He had to capitalize on that.
Yeah.
That was, it's a good show. And there was usually 3 stories going on, right? And
it would cut between them. And one would be more lighthearted and fun, and one would be more dark and mysterious, and one might be more. So you think
about it, each one of those stories were about 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah. It was an hour-long program. I think both Love Boat and Fantasy Island were hours.
Yeah, so which about means 15 minutes.
48 minutes of programming, right? Well, it was a big success, especially in the early years. And it was brilliant that Aaron Spelling put it back-to-back with the Love Boat because they kind of played off of each other. But the thing is... and here's what else Brian and I talked about. Hold on. Saturday night show, which meant that people our age... watching it with their grandparents usually. It was a show that kids and grandparents would watch together. Wasn't particularly saucy or inappropriate. I mean, there were probably some things that went over our heads. There were probably some things that went over our grandparents' heads. Right.
But that's how we remember it. People from our generation remember it as a Saturday night show. So we wouldn't usually watch it with our parents who were like out.
Right.
But it was a kids and grandparents show.
Watch. Or The Babysitter, or you watched it.
There was a lot of shows like that. When you think about, like, we've talked about Hee Haw a lot on this show.
Yeah.
And The Love Boat and shows like that were ones that we could bond with our grandparents. Did you ever watch this with your grandparents?
Oh, I'm sure I did. Although my dad's parents, they would have been more of the Hee Haw crowd. But my mom
watch both.
Yeah. I mean, we did. One of the big things that was a problem, though, so there were scandals on the set. Do you know about this?
No.
Hervé was eventually fired.
I did not know. Oh, did they replace him with somebody? And
we're going to talk about that. But the biggest thing, at least the most public thing they said, was that he demanded to be paid the same as Ricardo Montalbán, and they refused. Ricardo was the star and he was the sidekick. Now, the question is, was he being unreasonable, or was this actually him looking for equal pay and equal respect, as a co-star?
Those were not equal parts.
No, you don't.
He was a supporting. You could do the show without Tattoo. You can't do the show without Mr. Rourke.
Well, he fought with producers. He made advances on women, like some of the guest stars and some of the extras and some of the people. He had kind of issues with doing that. He actually was married and had an affair on his first wife. He just had a reputation for being difficult. But a lot of people, who saw him in the show, I think thought of him as one way. He really had some medical issues going on too. It's said that part of his difficulty and part of his personality came from the fact that his internal organs were growing at the same size as a normal size organ, but his body didn't. And so he had a lot of pain and a lot of cramps, and he had trouble breathing sometimes because his lungs were too big or his heart was too big. I don't know if that's medically accurate, but he had complications with his endocrine challenge, and that was a part of the reason that he was kind of volatile sometimes. And then you think about all the things we talked about earlier, the therapy that his father had done, and I'm putting therapy in air quotes, the bullying that he had received as a child, the fact that he was originally cast as a sidekick, but probably his size had a lot to do with it because they wanted somebody who would be a little bit of a novelty versus didn't appreciate him as a true actor. But all of this led to lots of conflicts with the producers and with the cast and with the show. He and Ricardo Montalbán were pretty tight, but he ended up getting fired in 1983. So you asked if they replaced him. Yes,
I mean, this
and
was
no.
the same time where ABC was dealing with the same kind of stuff on Laverne and Shirley and on Three's Company, where these cast members were getting a little too famous for their show and was
Too big
demanding
for their
more money.
britches. Is that what you were going to say?
Well, like Suzanne Summers on Three's Company, they basically wrote her out of the show, or she was refusing to come to set. They would film a lot of episodes where like they were on the phone with her, right?
Yeah,
And she wasn't on set.
Right.
Laverne and Shirley, same thing. I think Cindy Williams had a dust up. And this may, if you're younger than us, this may sound really like foreign. Like, what are these guys talking about? But back then, man, there were only like 3 networks.
Yeah.
And these shows would draw 20, 25, 30 million people on just a random
every week. Yeah.
A Saturday night. And these shows were really big, and these people were becoming stars. And it was usually the co-stars, like the Suzanne Summers wasn't making as much as John Ritter on Three's Company, and Cindy Williams wasn't making as much as Penny Marshall. Now that one I get, but I do not.
Because everybody remembers Penny Marshall's name, but very few people.
Wasn't
remember
Shirley
Cindy.
and Laverne?
Right. Yeah. It's not Kelly and Alex. It's Alex and Kelly, right?
Wow. Yeah.
I thought that was more of an alphabetical thing.
Yeah, I think we should get paid the same on this show, but you go to this.
We do.
So, but no, that was the same network, and it was around the same time, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, ABC had to kind of take a stand, and they couldn't just give in to all these demands, I suppose. I think even the Lauren Tweez on the Love Boat maybe had a dispute where the one that played the Julie,
Lauren Tweez. Wow, that is
the
a
woman
deep
that
cut.
walked around with the clipboard.
Yeah. Julie, the cruise director. Yeah,
I think she even had a holdout where she refused to come to work. So I mean, ABC had a lot of like labor issues during this time. So maybe he started it, or maybe he was just like on the bandwagon.
Well, I mean, it wasn't just one thing, even though ABC said it was because of his labor dispute or salary dispute. A lot of it had to do with the other behavior that he had, and that was documented, right? This was something that was known about him. He left in 83 and he was replaced, but not his role wasn't replaced. They didn't try to find a new tattoo. They had a man named Lawrence who was played by Christopher Hewitt. So Mr. Belvedere, British actor.
Yeah.
So there were lots of contrasts between Tattoo and Lawrence. Lawrence was much more formal, valet type of person. He didn't have the same kind of energy as Tattoo. He was a reserved gentleman, and he actually was thought to be kind of stuffy, because instead of going up into the tower and ringing the bell, he had a button that he pushed and the bell would ring automatically. You remember this?
He was a large man. It would take forever for him to get up that tower.
I don't know if it was that. Was he smarter and more innovative by coming up with this?
I think it was the narrow staircase. The guy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it was the spark was lost, and that it ended up being in 83. Hervé was let go. 83, 84 was the last season, final season, and the magic had left with Hervé.
I think I would have cast it differently. I wouldn't have cast Mr. Belvedere.
I don't think he was Mr. Belvedere yet.
No, I know, but I'm just saying I wouldn't have cast that guy. I wouldn't have cast a stuffy British guy.
I think they were trying to go the opposite, right? They were trying to lean into somebody completely different.
I would have done that. I wouldn't have cast another little person.
Who would you have?
I might have gone like a
Charo,
goofball, like a Pauly
Shore. Oh, or Don Knotts.
No,
Don Knotts comes back and gets stuck.
somebody younger than like a young dumb guy.
Who was that in the 80s or 70s?
Pauly Shore.
Was Pauly? Okay, Pauly. So, hey, Mr. Rourke, or
I think I've gone for more the Gilligan,
Jeff
really
Spicoli,
dumb guy, kind of stoner kind of vibe.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I might have done that.
Mr. R. They call him Mr. R.
Because what you do when you cast a stuffy British guy is you ruin that chemistry, that dynamic that we were talking about.
Yeah.
I know more than you do. Has to be somebody that would be subservient to him in order to make it work. And you can't have like a butler type. You have to have more of like
butlers are by their definition subservient, right? That's their job, to be subservient. Even though they're smart, and even though they're clever, and even though they're well read.
Subservient, like intellectually subservient is what I mean.
Yeah, okay.
Not like, because Mr. Rourke didn't like say go get me a drink or anything like that. He was just like giving lessons. You have to have a Watson to the Holmes, right?
Yeah.
And I would have gone kind of a silly, kind of clueless, but or maybe you know what you do? You make you make that somebody's
rotating
wish. No, you make that somebody's fantasy
to be Mr. Rourke's assistant.
Maybe you do a rotating thing where every week somebody has a fantasy to be Mr. Rourke's assistant, and you just see how that goes every week.
Coochie, Mr. Rourke. Oh,
yeah,
Charo, how many times have I told you?
As nice as it would have been to have a woman in that role, I don't think there's any way that doesn't go badly.
Yeah. We have a dress code here on Fantasy Island, Charo. Well, one thing that is said about him and his role there is he did have a major impact as a pioneer in acting for little people. And, that was like as you said before, a lot of them were cast because they were little before. But you mentioned Peter Dinklage, who didn't want to be in roles like that. He wanted to be in real roles where he could really play, emotionally and real drama. And he's done it, right? I mean, the fact that he is a little person.
The only role I can think of that he's been in where they even talk about him being little is his role in Elf.
Yeah.
In which he turns it on its head. And
you're an angry elf.
He's like a bastard and like an angry guy. And so he kind of even plays with that.
But he's kind of he's a type A, he's a dominant guy, right? He's somebody used to getting his own way in that show. Well, and of course, Game of Thrones, he's amazing in that. As you go on, he becomes the mastermind for everything. There are a few other people that are worth mentioning. Billy Barty was an earlier actor who.
Yeah, but Billy Barty leaned into all that stuff.
Well, but Billy Barty also, I don't know if you know this, he was a big advocate for people with that condition.
Oh, yeah, of course.
He actually, he and Herve had some beef because Herve still used the word midget and Billy Barty didn't like that word. You ever heard of Warwick Davis?
Oh yeah, Warwick. Yeah,
Warwick
yeah.
Davis. Yeah. He was in Harry Potter, and he was in I think Willow and a lot of those shows.
And then Willow.
The other person that pops into my head, who I have this weird kind of, I'll tell you a quick story, like not a personal relationship, but a little bit of a tangential thing with Vern Troyer.
Oh yeah, Vern Troyer. Yeah.
So Vern Troyer was Mini-Me, and he died actually a few years ago. But I do drone videos on YouTube, and I had a video that had a big uptick in views. I was looking at the analytics on YouTube. This is several years back, like 5-10 years ago, maybe. And this big uptick, and on YouTube, unlike some of the podcasting tools, but YouTube does a lot better with analytics. I went to look and see the referencing, like where all these videos were coming from. And you know how on YouTube, if you watch one video, it'll recommend another one. If you watch this, you might like this. My video was called "How Not to Crash Your Drone," kind of tips for not crashing your first drone. Turns out Vern Troyer had a YouTube channel, and he had a video called "I Crashed My Drone," and it was that video
like a companion to it.
hundreds of thousands of views, millions of views. Vern Troyer, because he was popular on YouTube, and that video was linking to mine. So
Did you ever reach out to him?
Yeah, I said, "Hey man, we should do a collab sometime. How about this?
Really?
You be the small version of me." And
Mr. Rourke. You could have had a drone show.
I was thinking more of Austin Powers, but and Dr. Evil. But in all seriousness, he did break some barriers because he wasn't just he was a sidekick, but he was a sidekick with charisma, with feelings, with a personality, with some mystery to him. And he definitely helped change the way people view little people in Hollywood.
Do you think he was a good actor?
I do. I think he played one role really well, and that was the sidekick. And
I never saw that Bond movie, but it always seemed like he was reading his lines to me. He didn't seem like a great actor to me.
Maybe
it was his accent or something.
Watch some clips. You mean even on Fantasy Island? You thought that?
Yes, but it's the only thing I've ever seen him in. I didn't think he had a lot of range.
Well, let me blow your mind a little bit. He was actually in an episode, several episodes in the 70s of Sesame Street.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't blow my mind too much.
He played the role of Oscar the Grouch's legs. So, did you know that Sesame Street went to Hawaii and did an episode in Hawaii?
No.
In 1978. So, if you Google that, you just Sesame Street in Hawaii, and then you watch the first few moments, right within the first minute, you'll see Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch walking through the airport, getting ready to get on the plane, and those legs are Hervé's legs in the trash can.
They put him in the whole costume.
Well, it's the how Oscar the Grouch would pop out and the top was on the trash can, and he would pop out. Mm-hmm. You can just see the little green fuzz in his eyes, and then you see the legs walking. Because Oscar the Grouch was not mobile; like he never really moved. But in this case, he had to move, so they had Hervé in the trash can walking.
That doesn't make any sense. So the trash can has a hole in the bottom of it?
It probably was. There probably wasn't any bottom to it. It was just like rigged onto his shoulders so that it sat.
No, I don't mean in real life. I mean, we're supposed to believe that Oscar Grouch is in a trash can that has a hole in the bottom of it.
He wore it almost like a armor, like a suit of armor.
Or like the guy with the barrel.
Yes, exactly. With the suspenders, yes.
No.
Well, watch the first few seconds of Sesame Street in Hawaii, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
They should have. If I was doing that, I would have had the baggage handlers just throwing the trash can onto the plane.
That's why you were not a producer for Sesame Street. That would have traumatized a lot of kids.
I don't think it makes any sense to have a hole in the bottom of the trash can that he walks around in, because then the trash would just come out.
You've also got a giant bird with an imaginary friend, and you've got all these adults who were multicultural and multi-race in the 70s, all living harmoniously together. I mean, you had to be willing to suspend your disbelief. Not that can't happen, but at that time, it was novelty.
By the way, if you haven't listened to the Jim Henson episode, that's a few years old. Go back and listen to that one. But I think we might have mentioned in that one.
I think you're questioning his theories about these characters.
Snuffleupagus started as imaginary and then later on became real.
Yeah.
That's another hole in the logic.
He evolved. Yeah.
I think after Jim Henson died, all hell broke loose in terms of canon.
Well, Big Bird's whole quest when they go to Hawaii, where Snuffleupagus is still fantasy, is that he's going to find a mountain on one of the islands that's shaped like Snuffleupagus. And then he ends up finding Snuffleupagus. It's worth a watch.
I think it's Snuffleupagus.
Not Snuffleupagus?
No, I don't think so.
No. Well, if
you've been saying it wrong all these years.
If you want to correct us, not at dirtnapcity.com, let us know if it's Snuffleupagus or Snuffleupagus. No, that doesn't even make sense. Sounds like a dinosaur. Snuffleupagus.
No.
Snuffleupagus. That's funnier. And it rolls off the tongue better.
I don't think so.
So after he was on Fantasy Island, he didn't really recover. That was his biggest role. He had peaked as far as his professional role went. He ended up doing a lot of talk shows. He would kind of be on these comedy roles or cameos or guest appearances on other shows. But they didn't really cast him as a serious character at that point. At that point, he was a little person that they wanted to bring on who had been Tattoo. That's all they wanted to talk about was his role. It's probably kind of like William Shatner, always talking about Kirk. He's like, come on, let's talk about TJ Hooker. No, I want to talk about Kirk. So he did have this internal organ problem, a lot of trouble breathing, a lot of trouble, chronic pain. And in 1993, at the age of 50, he died by suicide. And he did leave a note kind of explaining about the pain and why, he felt he was a little bit misunderstood and things like that. But it was something he couldn't really ever get back to the stardom that he had once had. Now, as I said, he was on Sesame Street. He was actually in a movie called Forbidden Zone in 1982. He was also in Airplane 2, the sequel. He had a guest appearance on Different Strokes. He had a guest appearance on Taxi. And he played the title role of Rumpelstiltskin in Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater.
I remember that.
I guess
HBO.
he became pretty famous for a impersonation he did of Felipe Gonzalez, who was the Prime Minister of Spain for a little while. His last show before he passed was the Ben Stiller Show, and he was in contract or in negotiations with Cartoon Network to be on. You want to guess? He was going to be the sidekick on I thought a really great Cartoon Network show, like probably one of my favorites ever.
Which one?
Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
Okay, yeah, that was the talk show.
Yeah. Did you ever watch that?
Yeah,
It's really great. I love Space Ghost Coast to Coast. But yeah, he did definitely in some ways sabotage himself, but in other ways broke a lot of ground and became somebody that was more than just what you saw when you looked at him. He became an icon, and he became a person that, while I think a lot of people maybe didn't think his acting was that great, at least it was sincere. It wasn't just there for comedy, and it was there to kind of help the show Fantasy Island bring those morals to light.
Oh yeah. And I would say for anybody our age, 100%, what do they call it? Q rating, right? Like,
yeah. How recognizable you are.
Yeah. Probably more so, even though The Love Boat was probably had higher ratings. I'm guessing that he had a higher Q rating than any one person on The Love Boat.
One challenger I could think of, and I actually don't know his real name, but
see, there you
Isaac,
go. That's my
Isaac
point.
the bartender with the pointing.
That's my point.
The two fingers.
That's my Ted Lang.
Ted Lang, thank you.
But that's my point, is that we know that Hervé Villechaize's name, and you don't know any of the names of any of the people that are on The Love Boat. I mean, I do, but you wouldn't.
True. Well, that's your superpower, Alex.
Yeah,
well done. Well, that's Hervé Villechaize. I found him pretty interesting and certainly enjoyed this conversation about him. If you like these kind of things, you should definitely download more episodes. Hit us up at Dirt City.
If you're still with us, 49 minutes into a discussion of Hervé Villechaize, then every episode of Dirt City is for you. This is the kind of stuff we do on the regular. And then every other week we talk about, instead of people, we talk about other kinds of things that aren't around anymore.
Yep.
It's typically for people that are in their 50s, I'd say, from Generation X. But I think it would be a blast to listen to if you were in your 30s or your 20s and you had no idea who any of these people were, but you love the knuckleheads that have the passion to talk about this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Or even if you were in your early 20s and your name was like Tate or Kirby, that might be worth it.
Sure. Probably not, but probably have some TikToks to watch or some Snapchats to snaps to chat.
To snap. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Dirt Nap City, the podcast about interesting dead people.
dressed him in white, tiny suit, tiny tie. Stand by his shoulder, smile on cue, don't ask why. He bowed to the laughter, but it cut him like glass. He was born for the spotlight, stuck chasing its past. This is the ballad of Hervé, heart too large for his frame. Every room he ever walked in, he was burning for a name. He kept calling for a runway, kept crying to the rain. The plane, but I was made to be the main. He loved like a landslide, fast, foolish, full speed. Too much for one lifetime, too fierce to be neat. He memorized perfume more than he memorized lines. Every kiss a confession, I am bigger than my size. This is the ballad of Hervé, heart too large for his frame. Every room he ever walked in, he was burning for a name. He kept calling for a runway, kept crying to the rain. The plane, but I was made to be the main. They said, you're the punchline. He said, I'm the pain. You clap for a shadow, I'm a hurricane. If I stand on this table, will you finally see I am not his echo? I'm the story. Sing the ballad of Hervé, heart too large for his frame. Every dream he ever chased down, still alive in his name. He kept calling for a runway, kept crying to the rain. The plane, I was made to be the main.